My audience, I have a lot of theists listening, mostly Christians, and Christian philosophers. So they're gonna be really fascinated, and they'll be really mad at me if I don't touch on the logos and the divinity in the traditional Stoicism, or just true Stoicism, if we want to follow that. Um, what is this logos like? A lot of times from Christian sources, interacting with the New Testament and the Stoics who are mentioned in the New Testament, and even just looking at the cultural milieu of the New Testament, people will say, well, the Stoics of the time, um, they believed in a divinity, but it was more of an impersonalistic deity, impersonalistic logos plan, which you could call God, but may not be like a person God. Any truth to that? Who is the God of Stoicism? What is this God like?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not anthropomorphized in any method, right?
Mhm.
So it is God is nature.
Mm.
Nature has a type of rationality. Um, but at the same time, you see these appeals. Like Epictetus will refer to Zeus as kind of interchangeable with the Stoic God. Now, whether he's doing that as kind of an educational tool
Mm.
to make sense to people in their cultural time, that's something. Um, he'll also so it's not anthropomorphic in any sense. It's depersonalized, and it's identified with I would say the rational laws of the universe, the kind of movement and order of the universe.
Mm.
So this is so whether or not you want to call that a god, if you think God needs to have intentions and a will, or could change their mind, or
Yeah.
could be mad at you, or uh, even love you, I guess you
Yeah.
couldn't. You wouldn't say this of the Stoic God.
Yeah.
What the Stoic God is again providential universe, so still ordered, and ordered in a way that is good.
Yeah.
And so the Stoic conception of life is that you harm yourself when you get out of this order, when you
Yeah.
create friction. So I think of this as there's the kid, and the kid is upset that the kid can't fly. And so you're consoling the 6-year-old. It's like, well, you're suffering because you've trying to pull yourself out of reality, or out of the way things are.
Yeah.
And likewise, this might be extreme, but someone you love dies and you feel insurmountable grief. Well, you didn't acknowledge that you were loving a mortal person. You didn't acknowledge or properly conceptualize that you were loving someone that dies, right?
Mm.
So you've broken yourself out of reality.
Yeah.
That's an extreme example, but that's kind of the picture here. So that's the God that we're working with. Some interesting things, though, is still. I mean, I don't know a ton about Christianity. You probably know more
Sure.
than me, but I think about the Holy Spirit, right? Which in Greek is the pneuma, the breath. If I'm right about that, and that's what the Greeks called your soul,
Hmm.
was this pneuma, this breath. And the important part about that is that this order of the universe is associated with fire. It's associated with movement. And so when you are animated, when you are alive, you're imbued with this breath, which is the part of you that has the most amount of divinity. I was talking before about how there's different amounts of divinity in different types of objects. Well, this breath has the most divinity. That's the part that has the, I don't know, the highest proportion of godlikeness, or the highest quantity of godlikeness. Um, and Epictetus will say things like this. He will say, you have a piece of God inside of you, right? And so there is this kind of connection with God as not a thing external that you appease or appeal to or deliberate with, but something that's inside of you that you need to get in accordance with and align with.
Yeah, that's good. So a lot of times you'll hear preachers say um, a really similar notion, but say we're not living along the grain of reality. Like you're trying to go against the grain, and you're experiencing this kind of pain and stuff. It's really fascinating what you said about breath and fire and divinity, because in Christian scriptures we also have the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, and there man is made in the image of God. And how is that? Well, God breathed in to the clay of Adam. He formed Adam out of clay, and he
Cool.
breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. I think it's ruach is the Hebrew, and then yeah, pneuma would be the new one. But it is this breath, and there, depending on who you ask, that is like the rational principle, right? That is something that makes us different. We're made in God's image, and so in that sense, like when we see another human, we know we can't eat a baby, but we can eat a pig. Why? Because we're recognizing the spark of divinity, the image of God imprinted on this being. So that is pretty cool, man. I think there's some overlap there, some connection that we can make, some common ground. I wonder about. I love the providence stuff. I wonder about providence without like a providential will. I wonder about like how is there providence without a without God guiding? You know, it doesn't seem like God could guide without a will or without rationality, right?
Well, for Christian gods in general,
Yeah,
um, Christian God, I'm a bit confused about God in the
sure.
Christian picture
Yeah,
because this is not somebody who reflects, right? It's not somebody that deliberates. God's will does not change in the Christian picture, does it?
yeah. No, no, no. Let me think if there's so it depends. There's different conceptions of God. Classical and neoclassical views of God are going to say no. Um, but maybe an open theist God might say that that's like the future is open, but that might be uncharitable. So it's hard to say. But on most conceptions in a Christian worldview, no, God is not needing to deliberate in that fashion. God doesn't have uh, not dispositional. All of God's thoughts are current to him, and so yeah, it doesn't look like he
Hmm.
needs to reason out things like that.
Yeah, so in that case, I guess it wouldn't look that different in terms of it being predetermined, providential. Um,
We would still want to say that he chose to create the world and create this world in this manner, even if
I'm just when was the point of
yeah,
choice?
yeah. So it depends on whether you think God created time or not.
Okay.
So if God created time, then there's this. It's kind of hard to say. Well, when did He do that? Because before then, you're using time language. If time is a component of His being, then yeah, you could say, well, at whatever time, I don't know what the time would be, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
But it wouldn't be a choice, right? It would be a kind of an unfolding.
We
Um,
wouldn't want to say it's like an emanation, right? Some people might say that if they go in for like eternal creation, there are folks who do
mhm.
that, but um, uh, why couldn't he have a desire and then act on that desire? You know, even if you could go in for compatibilism about God as well, it
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
have to
no, totally.
be libertarian free will in God. I mean, some people say that, some people don't. I'm trying
Yeah,
to
that's
hedge
fair.
all because I know my audience well and I've studied this stuff, and it's there's everything you say has you're stepping on a landmine.
Yeah, so I mean, great. So I think that's a good point. I think one things that are interesting here is that this is kind of pre-Christianity.
Sure.
So I don't know what the Greek word for providential is that we're talking about here. So that would
Mhm.
be interested to dig into because you can.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. It's not one that I've thought about.
Hmm.
I wonder if there's almost kind of an anachronism happening when Christians are reading Stoics and saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, this is a providential God," reading that into it, and then if you go back to it, there is a sense of this is the way things are supposed to be,
Mhm.
and it's good, and it is a good way. The universe is a good universe. Um, but in terms of what grounds that, if it's not, the choice of a perfect being, I couldn't tell you on the spot.
Yeah.
Um,
This
but
is good, man. This is fun. I love this. This is like comparative religions with Stoicism and Christianity, which is really cool. Um, I my audience is going to say, well, the Hebrew scriptures predate the Stoics and stuff like that, going all the way back, and Christians are going to appropriate that. So I do think that there's four gospels in the Christian scriptures in the New Testament, and the fourth is written by John. And I do think that John is intentionally speaking to Stoics as well as Jews. And he says, "In the beginning was the Logos. The Logos was with God, and the Logos was God." And so he's hitting on dual aspects here. One is he's reaching his Jewish audience um, who has this word. In the beginning, God spoke, and it was God created the heavens and the earth. He said, "Let there be light." And so there's this debar, there's this word. And so he's translating that to Greek, but he's also reaching out to the Stoics saying, hey, what you guys say is impersonal, this divine plan. It's a person, it's this person of Jesus. And the Stoics are going to say no, but he is trying to reach out, which is really cool. So it's anachronistic on purpose, at least in the case of John, because he's trying to convert them to Christianity, which I just think is so cool to see some interplay in the Bible between Stoics and Christians.
yeah, I remember I did so. I learned some Greek for my PhD, and you're translating some parts of the New Testament, and like maybe it is that part in John, maybe it's a different part, but talking about giving speeches to the Stoics and the Epicureans,
Yeah,
and
Acts 17. Yeah, Paul.
yeah,
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do love that. I think that point of that being on purpose, that's not something I've ever considered before, actually. The
Hmm.
active interplay where you don't take Christianity's kind of cultural dominance for granted, where it's kind of the maybe the cultural minority that has to appeal to the intuition or the
Yeah.
cultural impressions of the majority, which is
Yeah.
something different. That's
Yeah.
not something I've ever really considered, because I kind of stop with Stoicism in my study. But
Yeah.
really interesting. And the logos again, you know, yeah, I mean you've hit on this, right? But this idea of there's a rational principle, it's within us, it is also God, it is within all things, it imbues them with reason and order. Um, and so that seems to connect with, what you were mentioning from the Christian scriptures.